Hey there, folks. Welcome to another episode of Passionate Talk. This is episode number 10. I am, of course, your host, Gary Karp, and on this episode of Passionate Talk, we're going to be speaking with Jenna Matlin. Jenna is the owner and proprietress of Queen of Wands Tarot, and she's going to be sharing a little bit about her journey. She's going to tell us about the time she was kicked out of her house at 18, and how she got into college, and how she stayed into college and got multiple degrees. We're also going to talk about her beliefs about pantheism and our role in the environment and our personal responsibility to spur growth, not only growth of the planet and reversing the effects of the environmental situation, but also personal growth and economic growth and the responsibility we have to ourselves and the larger responsibility we have to the human race. So right now, I want you to sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, maybe a cup of tea, and enjoy my conversation with Jenna. My friend says I get up at stupid o'clock.
No, I think that's great. I wish, some days I'm like that and I'm really productive, but I work a lot of evenings. So I have to, sometimes I have to shift my days till later because I'm working until 9 at night.
Yeah, with me, the time between 5 and usually 10 o'clock in the morning is my sacred space.
It's a good plan. I know that I do a lot of my best work like between 5 and 10, like really early is when I do my best writing and my best thinking. And then it's just all downhill from there as the day goes.
Yeah, the worst is when you're in the shower and you get this great idea and like you're dripping wet. You have no way of recording it. You're just going, please let me remember it. Please let me remember it.
Right. Exactly. Or you're like, I'll be like, I do long walks too, and I'll get some of my best ideas, and I'm like, I'm like, thankfully I have like voice memo on my phone, and I'll stop right then and try to like take it down.
So when we last spoke, you started telling me about a situation with you and your college experience.
This story is important because it really is a story of adversity and a story of, making something of oneself despite adversity that's unfairly applied to you. When I turned 18, my stepfather, who raised me, but he was pretty much a horrible person, told me that I had 6 months to save up and move out of the house, that I was an adult and it was time for me to leave the nest. And the reason for that was I was talking too much on the phone and fighting with my younger sister.
You were 18. That's what people do at 18.
Yeah,
That's you're a normal teenager. Congratulations.
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the real reason is he didn't want me there. So at the time, I was working at Dairy Queen Orange Julius at the mall during the day and going to community college at night. And that was already difficult because my family was they were military family. So there was never a conversation about college. There was never a conversation about my future. There was just no conversations. And of course, me being a kid, I didn't really understand how the game was played. So for example, even though I was in advanced placement courses, I didn't take my SATs because I didn't have the $60 to take them. And nobody said, hey, you can get a waiver, or this is what you can do. There was no conversations like that. Like I was truly bumbling along.
Now, why do you think that there was none? Was it just that it was a military family and you just stumbled about, or do you think it was a tough love situation, or was it just self-absorbed parents that really didn't care about their kids?
I don't think it's about self-absorption and didn't care about their kids. I think they just didn't have. I mean, when you're dealing with an alcoholic, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. When all you're doing is putting out fires, I don't think that there's often a conversation about like what's going to happen 10 years from now. I also think that it is a cultural difference that when you are maybe in a blue collar family, they just approach things in different ways than like a typical middle class or upper middle class family would.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was just a cultural difference in approach. And so I was never prepped in a way other children are prepped. Like, what do you want to do? Or what colleges? Or what are you thinking? I have clients all the time whose kids are in SAT prep. Conversations about colleges and futures began in junior high school. This was never my story. So I had to bumble my way along and figure things out. So, yeah, so there's the education component. And at the same time as I was trying to figure all of this out, I was kicked out. So I had 6 months to save up for a car, which my mother told me to buy off of a lot. And we got some people to work on it. They turned out to be drug users and they pretty much gutted the car. So the car that I was saving up for to move out with was totally a waste of money. So we had an old jalopy car, and, my stepdad just graciously allowed me to borrow it. So I had to move out, and I did, and I rented a room in a kind of a seedy part of town from somebody. And what that kicked off was about 3 years of the most difficult time of my life still. Very, very difficult, very, very poor, and trying to just finish school. I often had no money for books, so I would have to take really good notes of the lectures. Or I could go to like the local like used bookstores and maybe if I was lucky find the book in an older edition, which is virtually the same except a different cover. So I would do that. I had to work, of course, so I couldn't really extend my class time. There were times I had to hitchhike to work or school because the car that I had eventually broke down and then I had no car. And where I lived was a kind of like a rural desert community in California. So you'd have one bus come it would only go one way and it would be once an hour. So if you had somewhere that was like 3 stops behind you, then that would be 45 minutes for that bus to finally, creak along to that stop.
So it sounds like you've had a bunch of adversity young in life, that at 18 you were kicked out. The car that you were saved up your money to purchase was gutted by the people who were supposed to be fixing the car. You were living in a seedy neighborhood with very little public transportation. It sounds like, knowing you now, how I know you and seeing you now, that you persevered. What was it inside of you that said, I'm going to make this work, when most people, I think, who are facing similar challenges or even challenges that aren't as big, throw up their hands and go, well, that's it. This is the life I lead. Where did you come up? How did you get that belief system? What was it inside of you that said, I'm going to make it?
I don't even know if I had enough of I didn't even think those thoughts, like I'm going to make it, like that was even beyond. I just tied my survival to getting a degree. And it was with laser-like focus that I knew that once I got a degree, then at least I would have access to middle class.
Okay, so you could say that it was the blue-collar work ethic.
I think that's part of it. I think maybe different from some of your other interviewers, that a lot of what pushed me was very negative, which was I knew that if I were to stay, then I would be in my own personal oblivion. I've always been intellectually curious and loved learning, and I knew that if I stayed, that would be denied to me. I also knew that no one was coming to save me, that there were no chances for me. Like, I couldn't just wait around. So part of it also was that my situation was just so uniformly horrible that I had to get out at any cost.
I think that's really important what you just said, so I just want to take a moment and re-emphasize that it was the negative situations that drove you, not the dream of anything else, but the pain, so to speak. We don't want to look at the bad, and the bad is really necessary, not only from what Jung referred to as a shadow part of yourself to know yourself in whole, but also it does give you the fuel to better yourself. As you said, you had no one to rely on but yourself, and you knew that at an early age, and that is such an important lesson.
I think it comes down to really getting this sense that when we talk about the universe or love and light, that that's not something external to who we are. It's also operating within us in real time. And so, where did that resilience that I had come from? I don't know. Like I had no examples of that. Where did that will and drive to make it come from? I don't know. So I do feel like that is also the other part of it, which is there was something within me that made me move forward no matter what. Maybe it was a survival instinct. Maybe I there was a part of the spirituality within me that said, "You're more than this, and we're going to get you there." In the same way that you hear stories all the time of people that are stuck in life and death situations and they hear voices or they somehow come up with, superhuman strength to move cars off kids, things like that. I feel like it could have been something like that for me because I don't think that I'm any better than anyone else because I made it out, And I think everyone is capable of it, but there has to be the will. And so the question is, where does the will come from? That I can't answer, but I do feel that's a divinely inspired, maybe in a subtle way rather than a loud clanging angelic bells kind of way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I was talking with someone the other day, and we were talking about signs and miracles and all these kind of things, and spirits and angels and everything. And everybody, in my opinion, is waiting for that cosmic lottery ticket. And many times, it's in the mundane, it's in the day to day activity that we find our miracles, the small opportunities that we can take to move ourselves just that one step, one foot in front of the other. Keep chugging, keep doing what you're doing, keep your eyes on the prize. It is in the everyday and that desire inside of you, even if you don't know where it comes from. It doesn't really matter where it comes from. What matters is how you harness it and how you use it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's subtle, subtle, quiet things that just nudge us sometimes in the directions that we need to go. Even if that function is to suddenly I feel that there are no other options except the goal I've set for myself. Like, how is that not divine? And I think a lot of times we tend to delineate things between, oh, this is a divine thing and this is just a mundane thing, but it's all the same thing. Mundane is
Absolutely.
divine, divine is mundane.
Absolutely. I always say that either everything is magic or nothing is magic.
Right.
A lot of time we talk about spirituality and beliefs, and for me, I'm not a big proponent of the personification of God. You know, the big old, kindly old, white-haired man in the sky that pats you on the head. But we are divine. You can't look at a smile on a child, on a newborn baby, or a pussycat who's just walking around the streets and not see, I'm going to use the term, God or the universe, because that right there is the miracle.
Yeah, I think that's true for some people for sure. You know, I'm really, if I were to put a label on my religious beliefs, I would say that I closely most identify with pantheism. I'm probably a pantheist,
Okay.
and that, I really believe that Earth itself is God. You know?
I agree with you 100% in that. I believe in Gaia, that we have to take care of her so she can take care of us. It's a symbiotic relationship we have,
Yeah.
and we can't just keep taking and taking and taking and strip mining and chopping down the forests and watching the ozone layer go bye bye and the temperatures keep increasing degree over degree over degree year after year after year and expect that we're not going to change. But I do believe that part of that spirituality is having a oneness with Earth and all the creatures on the planet, that we have to respect ourselves, the planet, and everyone living on it.
I feel like I mean, if we're going to go kind of into the environmental conversation,
Hey, we're going to take it where we want. Let's go. This is passionate talk. Whatever you're passionate about, let's talk.
I feel like the first step, though, is that humans need to forgive. We need to forgive ourselves for what we've done. Because when we look at evolution, it really is survival of the fittest. And so, coded in our DNA, genetically, after hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, is that you must and your own must survive at all costs. Everything is coded with that. Grasses compete for sunlight, trees compete for space, animals compete amongst each other and with their prey and other co-predators. This is a part of who we are. This has never been a problem. However, we've won. We've won. We've won the survival game, but we don't know how to stop. So we keep trying to win because this is such an instinctual desire within us that any animal has. So I think part of this is saying and really acknowledging that part of this is encoded genetically for what we're doing. I really don't ascribe to that. Well, indigenous populations were perfect and they sat with Gaia and everything was perfect. That's actually inaccurate on many, many levels. My first degree is anthropology and I studied that. So I think part of this is that we woke up onto this planet with intelligence and were met with silence. And we didn't know what to do with that. So we created stories. We felt maybe a divine presence, but we didn't know what it was.
Absolutely.
And it didn't talk to us, I think, in the way that we talk. And so we created stories. And so I feel like the first thing we need to do is forgive ourselves and understand that we're fighting many, many, many years of genetic evolution in order to stop this train wreck that we're headed for. And we didn't ask for this. We didn't ask for a planet that is based on competition to succeed, which is what has created such a beautiful planet. It could have been a planet where it's just all grass and like ruminants, no competition needed, but it hasn't. And so we are actually the byproduct of what this earth has set itself up for. We are not separate from that. But now we also have this intelligence and we need to find a way to stop ourselves because we're going to turn around and kill the thing that created us.
I think that's very, very powerful what you said, that we need to be able to forgive ourselves before we can move forward. I also do believe that it's this evolutionary kill or be killed, survival of the fittest Darwinism that is going on here. And I think if we want to move forward and save our planet and save ourselves and continue to grow and maybe become the idealized Gene Roddenberry Star Trek Federation view that I think a lot of people subscribe to, that we don't need to do away with that evolutionary thing that's inside of us, but we need to be able to redefine it, maybe ask a different question, define what survival is. We're no longer at a point where we have to fight for the meal, that we have to go out and leave our caves and harvest and fight a saber-toothed tiger. What we need to do is now redefine what survival is from a one-to-many situation to a many-to-many situation. How can we survive now as a species, not a me versus you, but a let's all get together and win, and define winning as bettering our life, bettering our planet, and bettering our future for the next generation.
Right. It starts at home, really. So even though we don't have to get that saber-toothed tiger, you know, we're like, oh, I need to save up for retirement. I'm not going to have enough if I don't. So I've got these money that I've made in stocks and bonds. Maybe that's a petroleum company that I have invested in, and I want them to make me good money. Partially, I feel bad about it, but at the end of the day, I have to continue to eat at 85 or 80 if I'm lucky to get there. So this idea to survive is still very much alive and well. Even when we think we're very removed from environmental and planetary consciousnesses, we actually are continuing to goad it in ways that are not immediately obvious. Like, you know, here in Pennsylvania, you can choose your energy provider. And so I don't know if that's the same in New York, but, you know, I have green energy. So my home is run on solar and wind. Of course it costs me more. Of course it costs me more, but it's important to me. And so I've decided to make decisions that aren't financially the most best decision I could possibly make in order to do something that helps the planet. But I think in so many ways people are in that scarcity consciousness, which is that like survival of the fittest. I'm not going to have enough. There isn't going to be enough. I have to take care of myself. I have to buy the cheapest Chinese made thing, even though environmentally it's horrible, because I need to save those $2. In so many ways, those small choices are really amplified with this planetary effect.
You're absolutely right with what you're saying. It's not just in the environment. I know about for 4 or 5 months now, I've been on a health and fitness kick. I've started exercising. I've changed my lifestyle to be a vegetarian, plant-based lifestyle. Not quite vegan because I can't kick the eggs, but I'm like 98% vegan. It has done incredible things for me. I have lost over 40 pounds and over 3 inches on my waist. But in order to eat this way, it's more expensive to go and buy organic vegetables, to go and buy tofu, to go and buy unprocessed food than it is to go buy a box of Rice-A-Roni or Hamburger Helper, which is quicker and easier and also cheaper. So it is the decisions that we make, even though they may not be the smartest ones from a monetary standpoint, that will drive our other beliefs. So I guess my question is to you, how do we go about changing that scarcity mentality into one of abundance?
I think that's the $1,000,000 question. I don't know the answer to that. I think people need to understand that, like what you were saying before, that it's not about me or I, it's about us and we, and that we're all in this together and we all need to take care of one another. And I think that extends to economic realities, it extends into family dynamics, that it's all interconnected and it's extraordinarily complicated.
I also think that part of what will help, and I know it's helped me a lot, is I have stopped watching the news. I have stopped reading the news because I find the news, whether it is the mainstream media or whether it's a fringe media on the right or a fringe media on the left, is all about fear. They're all about instilling fear. And when you're living in fear, you're going to have that scarcity mentality.
And when news is curated through a platform that needs your eyes in order to make a profit, then it will ascribe to the lowest common denominator to make you do so, which is to instill fear and anxiety. I think that's the tactic that a lot of these places, right, left, or center, tend to use. But the thing is that we fall for it. We're the ones clicking on the clickbait. We're the ones going, oh my God, they wouldn't do this if we weren't actually signing up for it ourselves, if we had more people that were like, I'm opting out of this. This isn't working for me. So it all comes back to the individual and our own self-awareness, I guess.
So do you have any practices that you do on a daily basis to keep yourself in the proper mindset, to keep yourself strong? Do you meditate? Do you exercise?
I've always been someone that's had a outside-in kind of viewpoint of society. I don't know if that's like a shamanic function about what I do, but I've always been like kind of slightly on the outside looking in. That's been very natural for me.
Can you explain that a little bit for our listeners who may not understand that outside looking in shamanic point of view?
I became a vegetarian at 12,
Okay, that's a little bit before I did it, but okay.
Would cry when kids would step on ants at 5. I always had, I feel like, a non-normative understanding of myself and the culture and the planet that always shifted me outside of things. I was always questioning norms, always questioning, why are we doing this? I remember like in junior high or high school, so basically you work this hard to get a lawn and a house in the suburbs and that's it, end of story. Is that really what we're here to do? Is that all there is?
I think that is so important, questioning everything. We need to question everything and have that intellectual curiosity. And I think it's really a shame that there is this stigma now coming about intellectualism and science. I want to talk a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Sure.
Number one, how do we combat that? Because we talked about with the environment, we see the effects on global warming.
There was a really great article on climate change that came out yesterday in the New York Magazine. It's called The Uninhabitable Earth. And it's not doomsday, but he does look at the more scarier aspects of what could potentially happen. I feel like humans, again, we're still operating in that like genetic encoded thing where it seems like what's going to work is fear. So if we need to scare the heck out of you to make changes and to fight and call your legislator and vote the people in that make the changes relevant, if that's what it's going to take, that's sad. That's really sad that may be what it takes. But when people are asleep to life and there's not a lot of self-reflection, then you do kind of get that Darwinian sense of things, which is if I'm comfortable, then I'm not moved. And I'm really only moved by two things, which is fear and desire.
It's all about, we're so pushed through commercialism. Society has turned us into really a society of not innovators,
Yes.
but of consumers. We are a consumer society because we've got to make that buck. The evolutionary kill or be killed, survival of the fittest, when it is applied to business, is you've got to keep making a profit. It is not in the best interest of companies to make a product that will last the test of time any longer. In the 1950s, after the World War II, when we were the greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw calls
Hold
us.
on. Could you hold on? Wow, I'm having a big cat fight. Hold on.
Jenna, at this moment, is making sure that her cats have not been killing each other. We'll take a brief recess.
Sorry about that.
So the cat's okay?
I've introduced two cats together, and one of them continues to hassle the other, and there was a fight.
The territorial thing going on, yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That leads into everything we're talking about. Survival of the fittest. Cats are very territorial, and probably the new one is the one that's got his ass up and trying to make inroads.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Yep. He's going, this is my neighborhood now. So yeah, that's a perfect example of what we were just talking about. Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, exactly. Is exactly right.
Yeah.
I think too, like when I think about, what was it? Was it Theodore Roosevelt that enacted the 40-hour work week?
I think it was FDR.
It was
one of
FDR.
Roosevelt's. I
Yes,
think it was
yes.
FDR.
Yeah, it was FDR. Thanks. And the idea with the 40-hour work week was that there would be time for the average person to develop themselves, to have hobbies, to go places. And here we are with that 40-hour work week. And what are we doing? Like chortling at dumb memes on Facebook. So there also comes this point of personal responsibility. Like, are you just going to take the lowest common denominator and just roll with it? Or are you going to continue to push yourself to greater personal growth and self-awareness, I think everything starts as the inside job. And it feels like the system is trying to put us to sleep.
I definitely agree with you that the system is trying to put us to sleep. The question becomes, how do we wake up? How do we ignite that spark of passion? I would, and I've made a point to this, to limit my television watching in the evening and to really listen to a podcast or read a book. Read a personal development book. Read a book on starting a business. Read a book on how to better your health. Something that will feed yourself. The question should never be, is it easy? The question should always be, is it worthwhile?
That's true.
Because when you build yourself, then I think you will become more engaged in the world. You will become more engaged in the issues of the world, in the environment, in the politics, in the society, in the human rights issues.
I agree with all of that.
What I'd like for you to do now is, as many people who have talked about the issues we have now that we have talked about, and if you can give one piece of advice to these people, what would it be?
If I were to give one piece of advice, my advice would be, no one's going to come save you except yourself. And you need to be your own knight in shining armor.
That is great, great advice, and I totally understand and agree with that. And I know we've got a hard stop coming up because you've got clients coming in. But right now, why don't you take a moment to plug yourself, plug Queen of Wands Tarot, plug whatever you want, and let people know more about you and how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. I am the proprietress of queenofwandstarot.net, or you could find me at jennamatlin.com. I do intuitive coaching using tarot as well as energetic attunements, and you can find me there. I also do business coaching for other esoteric arts. What else do I do? But yeah, that's it. That's what I do. So come reach out to me if what I've said is intriguing and you want to work with me on your own personal development and growth.
Folks, I just want to give you, Jenna, a personal endorsement. A few weeks ago, I went to her for a tarot consultation, and she hit the nail right on the head for me and gave me a lot of good advice that I have acted upon and has really turned my life and made it a better place. So go reach out to Jenna. She will be able to help you overcome any challenges you have. Jenna, I do want to thank you for spending some time with me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great.
The one thing that I got from that conversation with Jenna is that she is a tenacious individual. She has a drive, a determination, and a stick-to-itiveness that has served her well. I love the fact that she admitted that it wasn't a dream or a positive goal that drove her to achieve everything she has, but it was the negative. It was the fact that she saw a brick wall, that she realized that she was going to be living in her own private hell if she did not escape where she was. And she knew that she was the only person that would help her make that escape. So she pulled herself up and she got herself into college and got those degrees, even though she faced astronomical challenges. There's a lesson to be learned in there, that we shouldn't be afraid of that negative side, but we should embrace it and use it as fuel to drive us towards our goals. I also love the fact that she is so passionate when it comes to talking about the environment and how we can correct the environment, and really taking personal responsibility in the small, everyday things that we do to make those decisions to buy the healthier food, to buy the more expensive item, even though it may not be right financially, it will be right for the environment, to not invest in companies that do not morally or ethically agree with us, even though the money that we get from them would be far, far better. I love the fact that she has chosen solar and wind energy for her house rather than going with oil. It really says that she walks her talk and she lives authentically and congruently. Some of the things she said was just wonderful. The advice that she gave: be your own knight in shining armor. No one is going to come to save you. That's a lesson I think we all can learn. We're all waiting for somebody to come in and say, here's a hand, let me help you. But as it says in the Bible, the Lord helps those who helps themselves. If you're looking for a handout, you must first give that handout to yourself. You must first start to pull yourself out and design and manifest the life that you want. Once that starts happening, the universe will give you the opportunities and put you in the right place to meet the people to take you to where you're going. Well, that's all the time we have on this episode of Passionate Talk. So, until we meet again, live your dreams and passions and manifest the life you choose.